Okay. Hello. Welcome back to try two of this video. Hopefully there's sound now. All right. So in today's talk, I'm going to be talking about how the self-love path is going to help us move out of the consensus reality, looking for good and bad, right and wrong. Okay, awesome. And it can transition us to being able to see the nuances of real reality. It transitions us to being able to see what is actually beneficial for us and what isn't beneficial for us. It transitions us to a state where we can start to observe reality, like I said, for how it actually is. And we can start to understand what we actually want and what we actually need, so we can move towards these things rather than being caught up in this idea that we want to be good, or we don't want to be bad, or we want to do things right and we don't want to do things wrong, without knowing what we actually mean by any of that. So the first thing, again, to really understand is that we live in a world that's very much dictated by consensus reality. And consensus reality is a very complex thing to understand. So like I was saying before, that in my mystery school and the new curriculum that I'm writing right now and releasing, I'm doing an entire section on consensus reality and why our deep desire to fit in and to do things right by societal standards, or just by the standards of the groups that we identify with, why that is such a strong pull in us, and why that desire to do the right thing and be good and be liked and be accepted is really natural and makes a lot of sense based on our evolution and makes a lot of sense based on our childhood experience. But why it's not always the actual best thing for what we want and what we need, and the actual best thing for life in general and the world in general, and why we can get so confused because we're trying so hard to be good and we're trying so hard to do the right thing. But if we ask ourselves why, and what we think is going to happen if we do the right thing and if we do good, we either kind of don't know. Or the answer is, if I do the right thing and if I am good, I will be happy. I will have the things that I want and that I need. Life will be good. And we don't know why the being good translates to being happy and having the things that we want and what we need. We just know that we think that that's going to happen on some level. And so again, we do have to understand, right, that from forever, for as long as humans have existed as humans who live in any kind of way that is similar to how we live now, we have survived together. We have survived in groups. And we also have to remember that real reality, living in alignment with reality, is hard. Okay, so we're not just a bunch of humans who suck and don't know what we're doing and we're like failing at everything all the time. We really need to consider ourselves as being beings who live on this planet that is incredibly complex, that is incredibly difficult to predict a lot of the time, where so many of the things that happen are things that we don't have control over, are things that we can't affect, are things that we have to just learn to understand and align with. And then combining that with the fact that we have a consciousness, we have an awareness that we can suffer and that we can not know why that suffering is happening, that we can be stuck in that suffering, that we can remember suffering and not know how to avoid it in the future. So we have this consciousness that is very much aware of how hard life is and aware of how much we can suffer and how much threat there is and how vulnerable we are. But that doesn't have perfect awareness about what to do with all of that, right? There's just so much existential fear that comes along with being a human with consciousness that, again, we are going to be in a constant state of searching for, on some level, safety. We are going to be in a constant state of searching for pleasure and searching for familiarity and searching for predictability, because historically, those have been the things that have triggered us into, like, that we have experienced when we were in a state of survival, when we were in a state of growth, when we were in a state of being supported in our way of being. Okay? And then again, we are very complex individuals who all have different needs and wants and desires. So mixing that all up, so what I need as an individual, what works for me, what works for humanity in general, like the kind of basic things that we all share as a humanity, combined with the reality of the world we live in, with the changing weather, and I don't even just mean right now, like forever, right? Weather changes, climates change, we shift and we move, and food situations change, and diseases happen, and different tribes come and compete with us for resources, and all of these things. Like, it's just like this continual unpredictability and tapping into our vulnerability. In order for us to survive, the only way that we've done it, because of how complicated everything is, the only way we've managed it is within groups, right? We have survived because we learned how to live and work together as a group. Yes? And within that, in order to create a society that works, in order to create a group that can survive together, there has to be consensus on what needs to get done and what is the best way to get these things done. Like, that is the foundation and the root of all consensus reality. We have to live all together in order to survive. Surviving on our own isn't possible. We need each other. Now, what do we need to do in order to survive? And what are the best ways of doing those things in order to survive? And then to thrive and grow and do all of these things that we've done. Those are the foundations of consensus reality. And understanding that in history, like all throughout history, whatever it was that the group decided was how we do things, for a long time, if that wasn't actually in alignment with reality, everyone died or everyone suffered. So when we were living closer to nature, quote unquote, and we had less technology and less understanding and less of all of these things that we have now that separate us out from nature, we had to align with reality, because that was it. If you didn't align with how reality worked, if the way that the tribe or the group decided this is what we need to do and these are the best ways to do it, if that wasn't true, you didn't get your needs met. You didn't get food. You didn't get shelter. You would die of disease. All of these things would happen. So that was the first thing to understand. And then even within that, right, there were just so many things that humanity struggled to understand and didn't have the technology to defend ourselves against, and all of these things, that again, even when we were doing our best to survive, even when we were doing our best to create ways of being that were best for the tribe, that were best for the group, we were wrong a lot of the time. And we suffered the consequences of that immediately, because being wrong out in nature just means you die. You don't have the technology to protect yourself. So we have to understand that, and then understanding that again, right, all for a very, 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 very long time throughout all of human history, if what the group decided on was relatively correct and worked relatively well, and one person or two people or three people decided we want to do something a different way, we want to do it different, the degree to which that compromised the security of everyone else in the group was the degree to which you were setting yourself up to be kicked out or to be killed. Because people in the group doing things that were different than what the group was doing, and therefore hindering the results the group was getting, was a threat to the group. So the automatic response to that would have been to get rid of that thing, because you're threatening all of us. And then understanding that, right? Like, these are the roots of where this is how we do things, and anyone suggesting anything different is a threat to us, started to come into play. So even if the thing that you wanted to transition the group to doing was better, it was different. And because survival was so difficult, and because staying alive and getting our needs met was so hard for most of human history, stability and familiarity were programmed into our nervous systems as the best thing for survival. If we could just keep doing what we were doing, if we could just predict what everyone around us was going to do, because everyone was going to do what they were supposed to do for the tribe, meaning they weren't going to threaten me, and also they were going to do the thing that they needed to do to make it so that all of us had what we needed, right? It starts to get really programmed into our bodies that change is bad and wrong and scary, threatening to our survival. That is why it is bad. That when nature changes, when the things that we've built our systems around change, that's a threat to our survival. And when someone in the group says, let's do something different, let's change the way we're doing things, if the thing that we're doing works relatively well, people are going to be very, very unwilling to try something different and to do something else, because it's just going to read as threat. So these are the roots of our consensus reality. This is how we do things. We all have to agree on it. We all have to do it together. And change and doing something different and being different is a threat to all of us. And it's a threat to yourself, because that's how you get kicked out. That's how you get disciplined. That's how you get killed. This is how it was for most of human history. Yes? And then we understand that there was natural differences in our capacity to do what needed to be done at any given time throughout history to survive, to work within the group. So for a very, very, very long time, being a strong, able-bodied person who could hunt and who could fight made you dominant in the group, because you had skills that the group needed, that were the main skills that the group needed. So literally, without you, we don't have as much as we need. And therefore, people like that could exert their dominance and say, okay, you need me more than I need you. So I'm going to put myself in a leadership position. I'm going to put myself in a authoritative position. And in exchange for that, you're going to give me more of the resources. You're going to give me more of the women. You're going to give me more of the whatever, so that I have more enjoyment in my life, or I have more capacity to spread my seed, or whatever. And these are where we see the kind of roots of hierarchy. It's always existed, because there have always been people who are just naturally better at whatever it is that we need right now to keep society functioning. And in order to keep a society functioning, we can't usually, depending on the size of the society, we can't always have every member of the society putting in their equal share of this is what I think should be done, and everyone agreeing before we step into doing what we're going to do. There comes a point where we need people to take on leadership roles, and that they're going to make executive decisions for the group, because it would be too overwhelming for the entire group to have to talk about everything and put in their fair share and their 2 cents, and how long it would take to reach consensus on that and all of these things. So we can start to see that, right? Living in society is really complex. Living in society has always been complex. And the more technology we get and the more understandings we get, the more diverse our societies have been able to become, because we just have so many more ways of surviving and thriving today than we've ever had, because of technology, because of medicine, because of all of these things that we have and that we've developed. We have the capacity to survive and to thrive in a whole bunch of different ways now that we didn't have before. And we have come to a place where decentralization of power is actually a beneficial thing, because we have sufficient organization, we have sufficient technology, we have sufficient understanding that we don't need all the power to be centralized in any area in order that society can function. We have enough people who have enough intelligence and enough understanding that we can do all the things, but we can talk about that in a later moment. For now, we just have to understand that, again, this consensus reality that we are all afraid to break out of and that we look to for answers, that is something that has been passed on from generation to generation to generation to generation to generation for all of human history, right? The fact that all of us have a group of people, have several groups of people, that we say, these are the authority, these are the people who have it right, these are the people who know what they're doing. I'm a part of that group, and I'm going to look to that for answers. I'm going to look to that for approval. I'm going to organize myself around what is right and what is wrong and what is good and what is bad based on what these groups of people believe is good, bad, right, and wrong. We do that, number one, because we've learned from forever that to fit into the group is to have your needs met and be safe. Because for most of human history, that was true. The best way to survive was to fit in. Even if the group wasn't perfect, even if you had to kind of abdicate your way of being a little bit in order to fit into the group, it was still better than being kicked out of the group. It was still better than being seen as a threat by the group so that the group ostracizes you or harms you in some way. Like, that was really, really, really bad for most of human history. It's still bad. I'm not saying it's not bad anymore and none of us have any threat and we can all just be whoever we want and there's no risk of violence or harm or anything like that now. That is not true, and that is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that for all of human history, it was worse than it is now. It was worse than it is now. Okay? And then also that early childhood experience that all of us had, where we were living in an alternate reality of childhood, because that's what childhood is. Childhood is an alternate reality to adulthood. In childhood, we do not have the capacity to understand our own needs, to get our own needs met, to do what we need to do for ourselves. We are not capable of providing for ourselves or having the awareness of what we need or any of these things. And therefore, we are fully dependent on the people around us, understanding us, empathizing with us, knowing what we need when we don't know what we need, and meeting our needs. And the only control we had over that, the only power we had in that situation, was to augment our behavior to be approved of by our caregivers. That was the only power we had. So we learned deep in our nervous systems, before our cognition was even there to be programmed, that acceptance and approval equals survival and pleasure. We learn deep in our bodies that to be rejected is to die, is to be in threat, is to be in pain. And that was an alternate reality. So again, really understanding that the programming we all received in the first 7 years of our life and a little bit beyond that was survival and happiness and pleasure comes from fitting in. That doing whatever you need to do, changing your behavior in whatever way you need to change your behavior, so that you will be liked, so that you will be loved, so that you will be approved of by the people and the culture and the ideas and everything that are around you as a child, equals being alive, right? And then in adulthood, in real reality, part of that is still true. We still need culture and the people around us and society to a degree to survive. None of us are going to do this on our own. But at the same time, number one, especially now, especially in countries where we have developed sufficient technology and infrastructure and societal ways of being, we have created systems and ways of being that allow a lot of us to not fit into culture, to not fit into what everyone else is doing, to not necessarily be approved of and liked by people around us, and to still survive just fine. So that's the first thing that's changed. We now live in a reality that we haven't lived in as a human species for a very, 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 very long time, that we didn't live in for a very, very, very long time, and have only been living in for a very short time. Which is this idea that now more and more of us can sort of survive without directly being approved of by anyone around us, because we have grocery stores and we have internet and we have all of these things where we can get by with the technology and the infrastructure and the understandings of the people who came before us and of the people who maintain these things, without needing them to directly know anything about us, for us to take advantage of and utilize that technology and those resources to keep ourselves alive. So that is an interesting thing, that at this point in human history, we are the most capable of independence we've ever been throughout all of human history. It is the safest it has ever been for the most amount of people to start to say, I'm not going to follow the exact ways that everyone wants me to follow, and I'm not going to do what everyone else is doing, because I literally actually don't have to. I can rebel and I can be misunderstood and I can go a whole new different way and still be fine. That is a new thing. And that is a really important thing to understand. Okay? And that is something that is part of this new adult reality that we are living in, that doesn't match the program we got as children. And then the second thing is, as adults, we are now capable of understanding our own wants, understanding our own needs, and understanding how we get those wants and needs met in real reality. We are capable of understanding where it wasn't our caregiver's love that filled our stomachs when we were hungry. It wasn't the fact that we were loved and approved of that meant we had clothes. We can start to understand that as adults, love and approval in and of themselves don't do anything. It's not love and approval that gets us our needs met. Love and approval was a middleman between our needs being understood and met by somebody else. Now in adulthood, food is what fills your stomach. And if you have 45 people all around you loving and approving of you, and that's all they're doing, they're just loving and approving of you, you will still die if you don't eat food. Do you see what I'm saying here? You can have 35 people in the room all hugging you and loving you and telling you that they love you and telling you that everything is great and you're the greatest person in the whole planet and everyone loves you and approves of you, and you will still die if you don't drink water. You will still be upset if you can't clothe yourself, if you don't have shelter. Love and approval does nothing. And at the same time, we live in a world right now where you can go to the grocery store and buy food, and you can have an apartment, and you can work a job without anyone having to directly approve of like who you are as a person. You can have all of those things and have no one deeply understand you or deeply know you or have any awareness of anything about who and what you are. And you can still survive just fine. Now again, I'm not saying that we don't have needs and wants and desires for human connection that have nothing to do with getting our physical needs met. That's not true. Okay, so I'm not trying to say it's fine. If you can survive without people, just go and do your thing, and you shouldn't care if people don't like you or not. Because again, I know that like, especially in the self-help world, there's a lot of this like how to not care what people think about you. And I kind of think that again, like, I don't know that that's possible. I don't know that it's possible to ever get to a place where you genuinely don't care at all what people think about you, nor do I think that that would even be necessarily a healthy place to get to, right? Because number one, for all of human history and for all of our personal histories, being liked and being approved of was incredibly important for our survival. Like, that is programmed into our nervous systems, and I don't think we're ever going to get rid of that. That's the first thing. And the second thing is to truly get to a place where you don't care at all what people think about you would probably put you into sociopathic territory, right? To have no empathy for how what your actions or your way of being is doing to other people. Like, right? Maybe if you get to a place where you're like, I don't mind people having a negative opinion of me when I know that my actions aren't harmful, or when I know that what I'm doing isn't directly destroying the life of someone else, that could be a healthy thing. But again, at the same time, I also think that we're social creatures and we're always going to have social needs, and the need to be seen and the need to be validated and the need to be loved and approved of on some level is, again, not coming from a survival place, but it's just coming from we're a human race who have social needs. And so again, I'm not trying to say that you can have a fully fleshed out, 100% satisfying life when you have no friends and no connections and no one around you, and that you should just be okay with that. What I am saying is that in our current structure and in our current way of being, it's very possible to live a pretty full life without needing very many people at all to approve of you. Because, again, life is about getting our needs met. Life is about expressing ourselves. Life is about pragmatic results and pragmatic reality. And a lot of the time, approval and what gets us approval and rejection, what gets us rejected, are in opposition to the pragmatic reality of what it takes to actually survive in this life. And this is what I'm trying to talk about in this video. So we understand consensus reality, we understand how we got here. We understand why we want to be approved of. And so we can understand why we all have this program of I want to do good. I want to be good. And what we mean by that is whatever our programming and our conditioning taught us is good and right, and the thing that gets us to fit in is the thing we want to be, because it's programmed into our nervous system that that's how we get all of our needs met. That's why we want to be good. Okay, let's say that again. We want to be good because on some level we all believe that being good equals being safe and getting our needs met and having our community support that we want to have. Okay, second thing. Because life is so complex, because life is so huge and vast and there are so many things going on, it would be impossible for all of us to have to be in a continual state of redefining our values, redefining what's good and bad, right and wrong, what works, what doesn't work, redefining reality for ourselves over and over and over again in order to make any kind of decision, right? We need to have fundamental assumptions about how reality works so that we can feel like we have a foundation upon which to make the plethora of decisions we have to make on a daily basis. If we don't have foundations for this is generally speaking how life works, this is generally speaking what I need to do and what I need to be in order to get good results, in order to be safe, in order to be happy, in order to have connection, which makes me feel connected and leads to my safety and my happiness. We need to have a feeling, a sense that my general way of viewing the world is correct. I have a thing from which to make my decisions. And I'm hoping, well, not hoping, I've been programmed that this general foundation for how life works and what is right and what is wrong is reality, is the best way to get my needs met, is the best way to have success. It's going to make my life have more pleasure and less suffering. This is the solution to the problems that I don't know what else to do. These are my foundations. So all of us are handed that in our childhoods, right? We're handed that with the culture of the people we grew up around, their religious practices, their education levels, their medical practices, what the community around us agrees is good and bad and right and wrong, the governments we grow up under, the economies we grow up under, all of the things that our society that we live in values and therefore are going to lead to you having more money and more access and more power the more of the things you have and embody that society values. There are so many things that go into our baseline of this is what it is to be a good human. Because remember, we're programmed that to fit in, to alter my behavior, to fit into the culture around me, is to survive, is to have my needs met. And that is true in the temporary reality of our childhoods. It is better to fit in childhood than to try to be yourself and be rejected and abandoned when you can't do anything for yourself. Right? So we all have that deep, deep, deep existential fear of any part of ourselves that got us rejected, abandoned, abused, of any needs we have that we were shamed for. We have an existential fear of so many parts of ourselves to the degree that who and what we were naturally was not accepted and loved and approved of by the group we grew up in. And then that group that we grew up in is where we got our foundations for what is right and what is wrong, remembering that on a pragmatic level, what is right and what is wrong can be translated to what gets my needs met. So again, most of us never really consider why we want to be good and why we don't want to be bad. Much beyond it would be bad to be that way, right? The shame, the guilt, the this is wrong and bad, the nervous system thing comes in when we consider being any other way than what we've been programmed to be. Not necessarily because it's true, that if we were to be some other way, it would be pragmatically bad in real reality. Not because to be some other way would even be bad for us for our true self, but because our bodies learned if you do that, you get rejected, and being rejected is the best way to die. That's the program we got. So we all want to be good because it's programmed in that when we're good, we're approved of, and then we get our needs met. Second thing most of us have never considered is, where did our definition of good come from? And is it actually good in real reality? This is the thing that leads people who are going to go on an awakening path, quote unquote, into existential crisis. When you start to deeply question what was taught to you as good and bad, right and wrong, the good way to be, the right way to be, the wrong way to be, the bad way to be. When you start to deeply question that stuff, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to lose those foundations that we've had about how to live our lives. And again, remembering, we want those foundations because they give us a rule book to follow when we're living in this reality that's incredibly complex and we're constantly coming up against things that we don't understand and that challenge us and that hurt and that aren't working. We have to have, again, this feeling of like, it's okay, I can return to my rule book and my rule book will have the answer for what to do. We want to feel like we can return to something and we have something programmed in as the right way that's going to guarantee success if we just follow it. So when we start to question our rule book, we often don't find that we start to see how real reality works. We just start to see all the holes in whatever the consensus reality that we were handed has, and we start to have it all fall apart, and then we don't know what we're doing. And I believe in a lot of ways this is part of what most of us call that dark night of the soul. Is when that rule book that we've had for a very long time, no matter how painful it was to try to live up to it, no matter how much it hurt to follow that rule book, no matter how much we had to shame, blame, guilt, and go into hopelessness around ourselves, and I need to just change myself, and I need to fix myself, and this thing is wrong with me, and this thing is bad about me, we're going to start to see we believe that. Not because it's actually true in real reality. We don't know if it's true in real reality or not. We believe that because, again, all we had was, in order to survive, I have to augment my behavior and my way of being to fit in to the people around me. And if anything that I do makes it so that I don't fit into the people around me, I'm putting myself in danger of being rejected by the group because they're going to look at me and be like, you're doing things different, that's a threat. And then we're ostracized, we're kicked out, our needs don't get met, which is really bad for us in childhood when we can't do anything about it. And it's still scary as adults when we've never had to learn, okay, what do I actually want and what do I actually need? And how do I actually get those things met in real reality? Because most of us grow into an adult continuing on with our relationship patterns of childhood. Meaning, we then look to everyone around us to be our caregivers. And we try to be the caregivers of everyone around us, in the sense that we expect people to understand our needs and meet them without us having to understand what they are ourselves or without us having to communicate. And we expect ourselves to meet the needs of other people, to meet the expectation of other people, so that they will love us. And it's this big circle of everyone's just trying to be what everyone else wants them to be based on everyone's conditioning, thinking, with all of us thinking, if I just do the right thing, you will love me and then you will give me what I need. And we all think that about everybody. And no one's taking a step back being like, hey, wait, what? First of all, where did these rules of what we all have to be come from? Do following these rules actually pragmatically help us get the results that we want? Do we understand what you do, what I do, what I provide, what you provide, and the deals that we're making with each other of you help me with this thing I'm not good at, I help you with this thing you're not good at, and together we survive better? Probably not. Right? We're all just trying to fit in, and we're looking to each other to, am I measuring up to your expectation? Are you measuring up to my expectation? Are we doing the right thing? And we're looking to culture and we're looking to society to tell us what to do. Because most of us just feel like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what else to do. If it's up to me to figure this whole thing out, I don't know. I need an authority figure. I need a rule book. I need a culture. And even those of us who consider ourselves counterculture, alternative thinking, alternative health, we don't believe in the mainstream. Newsflash, we're still following a consensus reality. We're just following the alternative consensus reality. We're still just trying to fit into what that group would approve of. Like, have you ever looked at the alternative health, alternative spirituality, personal growth community and been like, man, all of these people are the same? Everyone's just saying the same thing as each other, and everyone's having the same revelations as each other, and everyone speaks the same language, and everyone's just doing the same things over and over and over again. And it kind of doesn't necessarily look like any of them are actually growing or having a good time, but they sure all fit in. You see what I'm saying? Just because we're alternative, just because we're doing something different than mainstream culture, doesn't mean we're doing anything better. Because it's, what do we actually want and what do we actually need is the question we should be asking ourselves. And we're not asking ourselves this question. We're continuing to ask ourselves, what's the right group? How do I perfectly fit in? And of course we're doing that because we're looking for the rule book that's going to guarantee that if we just follow the rule book, we will have the results that we want. Right? So we get into alternative health. And rather than actually listening to our bodies, when we integrate this practice, or we integrate this tool, or we integrate this supplement, or whatever it is, and seeing the actual results we get, did it make me feel better? Did it improve my strength? Did it do something that pragmatically made my health more positive? We look at, am I doing it right? Am I following the protocol perfectly? Because we're trained to believe that the protocol is correct. And if we're not getting good results, it's because we're doing something wrong. Think about that as being the primary program we got in childhood. Right? That's the primary program we got in childhood. Culture, my caregivers, everyone around me is God. They hold the key to all of my needs being met. They hold the key to everything good that I want and protection from everything bad that I don't want. From our perception, our caregivers, our God. And our only capacity to determine what happens to us is to fit in. So we learn very, 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 very early on that if we are in pain, if something isn't working, it's because we suck. There's a bad part of us that's getting us rejected, that's getting us misunderstood. Our needs aren't being met because we are bad and broken. Because God has everything and they're perfect, and we are failing. And then we start to project that out onto everything. So we get into our adulthoods and we think, If school isn't working out for me, it's because I have a learning disability or there's something wrong with me. It couldn't be that I just am a certain way. I have certain skills and aptitudes and ways of being and ways of learning that would work best for me that don't necessarily fit the aggregate of how we do things. We think bad, wrong, bad student. When we get into health, right? Personal growth, personal development. We're handed a protocol. Drink celery juice every morning, first thing. And you do it. And it doesn't heal all your problems the way that it's promised that it's going to. Because again, the protocol is always going to be explained, right? The protocol has always got all this logic and all this reason behind it. And if that aligns with how you logic and reason right now, you're going to believe it. It's going to have all the reasons in the world why this is going to work. And then you try it and it doesn't work. The first thing you're going to have the instinct to do is think that you did something wrong. You failed the protocol. You didn't do it right. Versus, maybe this thing doesn't actually work in real reality. And we have guilt when we miss a day, and we have guilt when we miss 2 days, and all these things. And it's like guilt. Guilt about what? You're doing this for yourself. If it's working, you'll want to do it. If it's giving you positive results, you'll want to do it. If you really don't want to do it, don't do it. See what happens. Like, this is what we need to start to see as the real answer to all of our problems. Being good and aligning with what is right is only as beneficial as what we think of as being good and right is actually in alignment with real reality. To be good and to be right is only as beneficial as what we have been trained to believe is good and right is in alignment with real reality. So if celery juice is actually what your body needs right now, then doing it right and drinking celery juice will improve your health. Not because you were good, not because the person who invented that would approve of you, but because you did a thing in pragmatic reality that actually met your needs. If celery juice is not what your body needs, you can drink it till you're blue in the face, and it will not improve your condition. You will be perfect A+ student, do it every day. It's a perfectly organic celery, and you slow juice it, and you drink it exactly 30 minutes before you drink anything else, and all these things. You follow the protocol perfectly. The leader of the program would be like, star student. You will have no health improvements because it wasn't what your body needed. So good, you were good. But what does that do? And vice versa. There are many things in our culture that we are taught as being good. It is good to go to church. It is good to be patriotic to your country. It is good to all of these things. And we do them, and we are good. And in real reality, we get bad results. In real reality, it doesn't work out to actually meet our needs and to actually make us happier and healthier and safer, to be good. But we fit in, and we look good, and people like us, and the power structures enjoy that we're following the rules. But who's benefiting from us following the rules? Who's benefiting from us being good? What happens if we're bad? Who doesn't benefit from that? What are the actual outcomes? This is what self-love helps us do. It helps us to step out of, I just gotta be good and I don't want to be bad, so that we can start to question, okay, where did my definitions of good and bad come from? And what are the actual results of me following through being good? And what are the actual results of me following through being bad? And like I said, kind of looping this back around to the idea that we're going to have an existential crisis and we're going to have dark nights of the soul when we start to do this work. When we really start to question, where did my definitions of good and bad come from? Where did my definitions of right and wrong come from? And in real reality, what are the results that I'm getting from being good or from being bad? And do they align with what I was told would help me have a good life? We're going to lose our foundations. We're going to lose our rule books. We're going to lose the ability to just follow the people we thought we could follow and that we thought we could trust. And it's scary and it's destabilizing. And it triggers the I'm going to get rejected and I'm going to get abandoned and I'm going to be alone and I'm going to die nervous system program. Very strong. This is why most of us, when we go through our trauma healing, everyone comes to the same understanding, the same revelation at some point. I'm afraid to be myself. I'm afraid to do the things that I want to do. I don't like parts of myself because I'm afraid that these parts or doing the things that I'm going to do are going to mean I'm going to be alone forever. That everyone's going to hate me and I'm going to die alone. That is the human fear. Pretty much everything comes down to that. Because again, to us, in our nervous systems, in our brains, the main program we got, approval equals survival. Approval equals pleasure. Approval equals getting my needs met. Rejection equals death, equals suffering, equals not getting my needs met. We are more afraid of not being approved of and being rejected than we are of literally anything else. Because that is the thing that to us ultimately means suffering and death. We all have our trauma rooted in some terrible thing happened, and I think it was because I did something wrong. We all have the trauma of being hurt and injured and abandoned and abused and traumatized, and believing it was our fault somehow, or believing it could have been avoided and it wasn't. And then of course we do have the trauma of the actual thing, because in real life, as much as we all want to believe that reality is perfect and awesome, it is not. In real life, we can suffer things that we didn't see coming, that we don't have control over, that hurt us and harm us in permanent ways, and that is going to be something that is painful forever, to a degree, because we want to survive and we want to thrive, and our bodies remember pain. But having safety and having our needs get met and having what we want is not a direct one-to-one result of being good. And having pain is not a direct one-to-one result of being bad. And there are so many versions on our planet of what is right and what is wrong, because we don't have consensus for what the absolute best way to live is for everyone to get their needs met. And in fact, there probably isn't a consensus to come to, because what some groups of people need is going to be different than what other groups of people need. And we're such a diverse species that, again, we have shared needs for food and water and shelter and these things. And infrastructure and technology is all about that. But then what we need to feel expressed, what we need to feel connected, what we need to, like our sexual needs, our artistic needs, all of these things, it varies so much. And learning how to get these needs met in community where we're not harming each other along the way, it's complicated. But what we have to understand, I think, at this point in our evolution is that we have to stop looking for what's right and wrong and what's good and bad. We have to be the kind of people who are brave enough to love ourselves enough to face that fear of rejection, to face that fear of being misunderstood and not being liked, so that we can understand what we actually want and what we actually need. So that we can start to be the kind of people who question the power structures. Because not everything in consensus reality is wrong, and not everything in consensus reality is harmful. Right? This is why just going alternative isn't the answer. Because there are good things, as in pragmatically correct, in an alignment with real reality, things in consensus reality. There are things in alternative ways of being that are just as harmful as anything that we can blame in consensus reality. And vice versa. There are absolutely painful things that are harmful in consensus reality, that being good and doing good by society standards is actually causing harm. And where being bad and rebelling from consensus reality is actually beneficial. And when we can start to work that self-love muscle enough that the fear of being rejected isn't the thing driving us, that we can see that we can understand that we can hold space for ourselves, and we can start to take steps where, again, we're not endangering ourselves, we're not setting ourselves up for imprisonment, or unless that's something we really want to do, like where we're taking pragmatic steps to challenge the status quo to the degree that we know we can, we must. Because this is how we're going to build a new society. You don't just tear down the old one and expect a new one to be birthed in its place. A new society requires that we understand all the good things we already had, and we keep building on those things. And then we understand the needs that we were getting met through the things that didn't work, and we understand how to get those needs met better. We have to come up with better ways. We can't just say that way sucks, so don't do it. And in order to find better ways, we have to look at pragmatic results. What is actually happening? What actually happens when we do this thing? When we are good, what is the result? Other than being loved and being approved of. What's the actual outcome? When you follow the program perfectly, do you get the results that are being promised? If not, it's not you. The program is wrong. Like, we need to start to be able to do that for ourselves. And it's destabilizing, because then it means we don't have a rule book to follow. We have to constantly be questioning, is this rule book actually true? And it's hard. And we have to be constantly, okay, what do I actually want? What do I actually need? When I'm wanting approval and love, what do I think that's going to get me? What do I think that's going to protect me from? If I were to be rejected for being this way, what would actually happen? Is it more important that I do the thing and get rejected and suffer that loss, but then express the way that I need to express, or get my needs met in an actual way? Or is it better to follow along and get what I get for following along and sacrificing whatever it is I need to sacrifice to follow along? We have to be constantly thinking. constantly assessing. And it's hard. But it's so important. We have to stop looking for the rule book, and we have to just start looking for pragmatic results, which means constant existential crisis and changing our way of being from I'm going to find the rule book to I'm going to find the parts of whatever it is that I try that work. I'll keep those. I'll let go of everything else, and I'll find something else, and I'll keep adding to my knowledge. I'm going to look at what's good and bad and right and wrong, and I'm going to question it. I'm going to question who it serves. I'm going to question what would happen if I go outside of it. Who suffers? In what way? We have to let ourselves question and look for why we want to be good and why we don't want to be bad and what we think would happen and would that happen in real reality, and is this actually good and is this actually bad? Right? It's a lot. But this is what self-love helps us do. When we can get beyond the nervous system, I'm going to get rejected and therefore just don't, because we love ourselves safe, then we can start to see real reality for how it is slowly over time. We can do this questioning work so that we don't just become alternative for the sake of being alternative, but fit into that group. Or we're not just mainstream for the sake of being mainstream. We're like, what's actually desired? What's actually good? Where is the harm? Where is the help? That's real reality. Okay? So that's that. That is how self-love helps take us out of the right and wrong, good, bad paradigm and into the gray, where our steps forward aren't going to be perfect, and there's no perfect thing, and it's not good and bad, it's just what's pragmatic right now. When you can love yourself enough that fear of rejection isn't the thing that's ruling your life, when you're going deeper than that, why? What? You understand that programming, you see where it all came from, you love that part of yourself safe, and then you start to look for real reality. That is the path. Okay? So come check out the Mystery School if you want more stuff like this. Other than that, I'll see you in a week. Have a great week, day, month, whenever I see you next.